So, Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam today, chapter 2. We're on Canto 2, chapter 7. We'll cover 16 through 20 when we get there, not just yet. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Gopi Jana Bala Hari. Gopi Jana Hari. Nanda Raja Jana Nanda Raja Jana Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 And let's say these together. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Nasta Prayeshu Abhajeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and Srila Prabhupada, the translator and commentator. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as the irrevocable fact. Omaginatimidantasya janandana salakaya chaksur uditam jena tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada very kindly, forcefully opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge, and therefore one remains indebted to him life after life. And I beg for service life after life. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we're continuing on with this wonderful chapter of descriptions of the incarnations of the Lord. And we're up to number 16. Good. Okay, so Hare Krishna. Okay. Happens all the time. You two gentlemen in the front, I think you need to get up and straighten out your seat. I can see that the things aren't straight and it makes me a little nervous. The center one looks a little weird. Just, I could be wrong. I usually, there, yeah. Okay, thanks. Thanks for you. Okay, 16 is about Gajendra. You heard a little bit about Gajendra yesterday. I'm just going to go, I'm just going to go back one verse just to refresh you about Gajendra, what you heard yesterday. The leader of the elephants, whose leg was attacked in a river by a crocodile of superior strength, was much aggrieved. Taking a lotus flower in his trunk, he addressed the Lord, saying, O original enjoyer, O Lord of the universe, O deliverer, as famous as a place of pilgrimage. All are purified simply by hearing your holy name, which is worthy to be chanted. And one of today's verses, I'm so happy I got this verse because I really love this purport. So we're going to read the verse and the purport. Would you like to read the verse?
Personality of Godhead, after hearing the elephant's plea, felt that the elephant needed his immediate help, for he was in great distress. Thus at once the Lord appeared there on the wings of the king of birds, Garuda, fully equipped with his weapon, the wheel, Chakra. With the wheel, he cut to pieces the mouth of the crocodile to save the elephant, and he delivered the elephant by lifting him by his trunk.
So just by reading that, you get a little glimpse into the story, but the deep meaning is really far out. Prabhupada gives a really nice purport here, as many places he does. It's just a question of our appreciation. But, okay, let's just think for a minute. Where was the elephant? Do you remember where the elephant was physically on the, it was in the water. We know where the water was? Was it this planet? Was it another planet? Was it on the heavenly planets? Was he right next to Vaikuntha? Do you know that? Where? He was on this planet, I believe. I think he was on Gandhamadana Hill. That's on this planet. Okay, so where's the Lord? Yeah, he's everywhere, but he's also in Vaikuntha, right? So the distance between here and Vaikuntha is just a few inches, right? It's millions and trillions of miles. That's the point that Prabhupada's going to make here in the purport. Okay, I was just giving you a pre-introduction. Would someone else like to start the purport? Yes. Oh. Yeah, 16. We're going to do the purport, even though we're not supposed to. Okay.
Purport. The Lord resides in this Vaikuntha planet. No one can estimate how far away this planet is situated. It is said, however, that anyone trying to reach that planet by airships or by mine ships, traveling for millions of years, will find it still unknown. Modern scientists have invented airships which are material. The yogis can make a still finer material to attempt to travel by mine ships. The yogis can reach any distant place very quickly with the help of mine ships, but neither the airship nor the mine ship has access to the kingdom of God in the Vaikuntha Loka, situated far beyond the material sky. Since this is the situation, how was it possible for the prayers of the elephant to be heard from such an unlimitedly distant place? And how could the Lord at once appear on the spot?
So this is the crucial point that Prabhupada's making in the purport. Let's fix in on it. I'm going to read it again. Since this is the situation, how was it possible for the prayers of the elephant to be heard from such an unlimitedly distant place? And how could the Lord at once appear on the spot? Now, after having immersed yourselves in Krishna consciousness for the past few years, few months, or whatever amount of time, at least we get a concept that, oh, it is possible, right? So let's talk about that. What's your understanding? How is it possible? Just a few things that might come to mind. Okay, go ahead.
All right, well, I've heard that the Lord is situated in the center of every atom, so literally he can appear wherever he wants.
True, good. And what about and what about Gajendra's? You know, you can see Gajendra's there, and he's just got his little elephant voice, right? Which might be a little bit loud if you're right next to him, but if you're, 100 feet away, you might not even have heard it. You might not, but still, he made his prayer, and the Lord heard it. And even though he's situated millions of miles, Vaikuntha, situated millions of miles is a joke, right? It's uncalculably far away. Still, he's there because he's within every atom. And who can remember some other situations in the Bhagavatam in the first canto? That was kind of demonstrates this, how the Lord is inside and outside. That's the big hint there. How the Lord is inside and outside. He can save people in danger from inside and outside. Can you think of one? Narantaka, Narantana, Narantana Priya Prabhu. No, it's not it, right? Yeah. Naratana. Oh, thanks. Okay. But I'm getting closer.
Well, inside, outside, the first thing that comes to mind is Trinity.
Oh, okay. Okay, I wasn't thinking of that one, but it's totally true. Good one, Nrsimhadev. Another one. Sundari Leela.
If you're thinking of, were you thinking of Maharaj Pariksit?
Yes.
And
so explain that one.
Well, Lord Krishna was besieged urgently by Uttara to save her child. He was just right there, like he's standing in front of everybody. But at the same time, as a minute version of himself, like that of a thumb or something, he was protecting Maharaj Pariksit.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing to meditate on, because that's how we have our connection with the Lord. He's there. We just need to call out to him. And maybe we'll see him physically, or spiritually or whatever. And maybe we won't necessarily see him or realize that he's there, but he's there and he's hearing. So this is one of the take-home, lessons or takeaways that we can get from this, that Krishna's there listening. He's anxious, and he's especially protecting his devotees. Although he's, equal to everybody, he especially likes to reciprocate with people who are trying to develop their relationship with him. Okay, can someone else go on a little further in the purport? I think we're on, these things cannot be calculated.
These things cannot be calculated by human imagination. All this was possible by the unlimited power of the Lord, and therefore the Lord is described here as aprameya, for not even the best human brain can estimate his powers and potencies by mathematical calculation. The Lord can hear from such a distant place, he can eat from there, and he can appear simultaneously in all places at a moment's notice. Such is the omnipotency of the Lord.
Any thoughts on that, or feelings, or reflections on that last sentence? The Lord can hear from such a distant place. He can eat from there, and he can appear simultaneously in all places at a moment's notice. Such is the omnipotency of the Lord. Any reflections? Gopal? Okay, that's good.
Kind of trivia, I guess. A moment is described in the Bhagavatam as 1/11 of a second.
Okay, 1/11 of a second. And you can imagine trying to divide a second into 11 parts, Okay. Yeah. Okay, anyway, it's something, please.
I just thought of the verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, I am everything, every created being is within me, but I am not in them.
Yeah, that's one of those other conundrums of the Lord, that he's present everywhere, but he has his abode. He has his abode where he lives. So he's present everywhere, and yet at the same time, everything is not God. There's a big difference. Any other thoughts? Yes. Here's a mic on this side, on that side, simultaneously everywhere.
The word appear, like it implies that he traveled from one place to another, but I like to think of it like uncovered, like he was there and just the veil of illusion just drops.
Exactly.
And then he decides to cover himself up again.
Exactly.
I'm thinking of quantum entanglement too, where it's just like, I know that's not like, but
It's okay.
two things connected at a great distance. They're never separate, yet they appear separate. So it's just like time and space is an illusion where it's all could be this single point, just layered on top of each other.
It's kind of like our forgetfulness of our past lives too, They're there and they're layered on top of each other. And it's that illusion of thinking that all that experience was real. And we realize, actually, I'm an eternal spirit soul. I don't have anything to do with it. I just kind of went off on that one. Anyway, any other feedback? Yes, Guru.
This makes the Lord very endearing because it seems like he will appear at a moment's notice for his devotee. So just he seems to be so loving that he tries to be the servant of his devotee. The moment a devotee calls for him, he will appear immediately.
Even more so, he's the servant of his devotees, and we're trying to be his servant. We're asking, oh yes, I'll be your servant, but can you fix this and fix that? Can you help me here? Can you help me there? But even so, he's there. But there is a slight, if I could just say, there's also a slight attitude adjustment that we need to have. That yes, our attitude should be to pray to Krishna, to glorify him, etc., etc. But it's not that if we're praying to Krishna or if we're in a dangerous situation and somebody loses their life or limb or this or that or whatever, it doesn't mean that Krishna doesn't protect you. It doesn't mean that his protection doesn't always come in the form of what we're thinking it should be. It should be like this. We should, pay off my student loan or this or that or whatever, you know what I mean? And he didn't help with that, so therefore I prayed to him. Or Prabhupada gives a very classic example, one he gives often when he talks about World War II, when the ladies in Germany prayed for the protection of their fathers, husbands, brothers, or whoever was engaged directly in war. And the ladies in England prayed for the same thing too, protection of their spouses and sons and cousins and brothers, etc. And so many people were killed during that thing. And so therefore, because they prayed to the Lord for that specific thing and didn't receive the result that they expected or wanted from the Lord, therefore they said, he doesn't exist. He doesn't, or I'm not going to have anything to do with him. So we have to be careful in our attitude also. We need to offer our heartfelt prayers, but we also need to have the understanding that Krishna's protection can come in many different forms. And what we see with our eyes is not always the real outcome. What we see with our eyes, oh, this person lost their life, they died, this and that. Therefore Krishna, but actually you don't know what happened or what will happen or what could have happened to that person and how it is all rectified by the Lord's arrangement. A classic example on that situation is Chitraketu. Chitraketu, long story, I'm giving you just a very brief thing. So at a certain point, he was a big, leader in the world, whatever, wealthy, prayed to the Lord for a son, didn't get whatever. I'm going to forget the point. Oh, Chitraketu, yeah. So Chitraketu, when he apparently offended Lord Shiva and was cursed by Parvati to take birth as a demon, you could look at that situation with your eyes and say, well, how is that protection? The Lord didn't protect his devotee there. But actually, the acharyas give us the real understanding in the explanation of that story. They say that Chitraketu, because he was such a pious king and had performed so many pious activities, and he had tons of pious credit, karma, that was due to him. So therefore, had he had to live out all that pious karma, it would have taken him a long time to get back to Godhead, and so much possibility of distraction along the way and falling down. So Krishna, he condensed it all, gave him a birth apparently as a demon, and therefore in his next life, after the demoniac birth, he went right back to Godhead. So with their eyes, we think, oh, that wasn't fair. He didn't get protected. But the backstory, which we can't, which is why we apply Shastra Chakshu, see through the eyes of the scriptures, that actually Krishna was there. He was protecting him. It just wasn't like one would have expected, you could say. Yeah.
What was that called?
Shastra Chakshu, seeing through the eyes of Chakshus. And I'm not a good speller in English, so forget Sanskrit. So Chakshus, Chakudana Dila. I'm sorry. Okay. We better run on to 17, huh? Okay. Comment? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Okay, but now you get to read the verse, okay? Can you read the verse 17, please?
The Lord, although transcendental to all material modes, still surpassed all the qualities of the sons of Aditi, known as the Adityas. The Lord appeared as the youngest son of Aditi, and because he surpassed all the planets of the universe, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. On the pretense of asking for a measurement of 3 footsteps of land, he took away all the lands of Bali Maharaj. He asked simply because without begging, no authority can take one's rightful possession.
So which incarnation of the Lord is being referred to here? Vamana Devi. And who knows who are the Adityas, the sons of Aditi? Who are they? Yes, the demigods. Aditi was one of the wives of Kasyapa, and she had the demigods as her son, so Indra and etc., and all the other demigods. And her sister Diti gave birth to all the demons. So Aditi has the demigods. Okay. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. Can someone in the back read, please? 18.
Bali Maharaj, who puts on his hair the water washed from the lotus feet of the Lord, did not think of anything beside his promise in spite of being forbidden by his spiritual master. The king dedicated his own personal body to fulfill the measurement of the Lord. The third step for such a personality beyond the kingdom of heaven, which he conquered by his strength, was of no value.
So this story of Bali Maharaj and Vamana Devi is narrated in the 8th canto, so it'll be a long time before you get to read it in detail. But in summary, Bali Maharaj had taken over the lower planetary system, the middle planetary system, and he had even conquered in the upper planetary system. So he, quote unquote, owned all the universe. But of course, a Hare Krishna devotee is going to say, he didn't own the universe. Everything belongs to Krishna, right? Right. But he thought he owned the universe. You know, that was the problem, the consciousness. And yeah, it's really hard to summarize stories in just a few sentences because then you think of all the details that you're leaving out. But anyway, okay. But interestingly enough, in order to maintain his position as the Lord of the 3 worlds, Bali Maharaj had to engage many Brahmins, qualified Brahmins, in performing yagyas and sacrifices so that he could still maintain his power. It didn't come easy for him. But anyway, at a certain point, Aditi, who was the mother of the demigods, being upset that all her sons and everybody were kicked out of their house and their palaces, she prayed to the Lord to help protect the demigods. And the Lord incarnated, that's the whole point. He incarnated as her son. He was just a little boy, just a little guy, just short little Vamana Dev. He was not very tall, and he just was in a brahmachari form. And so he went to the sacrifice where Bali was performing sacrifices to maintain his prestige and power to rule the universes. And Vamana says, could I just beg a little thing from you? And he said, sure, whatever you want. He said, I just need 3 paces of land. And And Bali Maharaj, sitting on his big throne in charge of all three worlds, looked at little diminutive Vamana Dev, who's often depicted like a 5-year-old boy, just a short little brahmachari. So, 3 paces of land, are you sure that's all you want? I could give you a lot more than that. So, no, if I'm not satisfied with 3 paces of land, how am I ever going to be satisfied with anything? But he did say, he didn't just say 3 paces of land. I forgot one detail. He said 3 paces of land as paced by me. That's the clincher right there. That's I measure out. And so Bali Maharaj said, sure, but he was being advised. Now, this is the interesting thing. Oftentimes we recite these pastimes and we don't think of all the details. So Bali Maharaj, spiritual master, was Sukracharya. Sukracharya was telling him, don't give him what he wants. Why? Because Sukracharya could see that this is not just an ordinary little diminutive brahmachari. It's the Supreme Personality of Godhead in disguise. And his purpose is to take everything away from you. So don't grant him that request. And Bali Maharaj thought, previously you told me to offer all respects to Vishnu. And now you're saying this is Vishnu, don't give him what he wants, he's going to take everything. That seems like a contradiction. So he only had a few minutes to think it through, but he decided he was going to reject that bad advice from his quote-unquote spiritual master and go with his heart, what he had been previously taught, that to offer everything to Vishnu. So sure, okay, sure. And so Vamana Dev said, oh, thank you. And immediately he began to grow. And so with this first step, he covered all the lower planetary systems. Second step, he covered all the upper planetary systems and everything in sight. That's everything. So where's he going to put his third foot? A third step. Bali Maharaj thinks really quickly, and he thinks, well, I'll give him my head. Okay. And so Vamana Dev put his foot on Bali Maharaj's head. Interestingly enough, though, what's the illusion? What was the illusion right there in that scene? I'll tell you, because I'm probably not saying it clear enough to know what you're. So for you to understand what I'm at. Bali Maharaj thought, well, I still have my head. When in actuality, even this body isn't ours. It's given to us by the Supreme Lord. The nuances from the acharyas are just so helpful, aren't they? To clear up all traces of illusion. And even though we've heard that millions of times, Prabhu, you're not your body, you're not your body. It belongs to Krishna. Still, the application, how it applies in our life is so interesting. So we greatly benefit from hearing these nuances, which are not so minor. Anyway, so anyway, Vamana took all the planetary systems and gave back the higher planetary systems to the demigods, and everybody was very happy for some time. Not forever. Okay, another person to read the next 19. Okay, don't all volunteer at once. Go ahead.
Oh, Narada, you were taught about the science of God and his transcendental loving service by the personality of Godhead in his incarnation of Hamsavatara. He was very much pleased with you due to your intense proportion of devotional service. He also explained unto you lucidly the full science of devotional service, which is especially understandable by persons who are souls surrendered unto Lord Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead.
Yeah, Hamsavatara. The Lord can take on any shape or form or whatever, and it's still the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes he speaks the Vedas through the mouth of a horse head, that's Hayagriva. Sometimes he speaks the Vedas through, quote unquote regular type of body. Sometimes Hamsavatara means he had the shape of a swan and he spoke that devotional service about in that form. And we have one more verse to cover, and then we'll go back to our other one. I'll read it. As the incarnation, this is verse number 20. As the incarnation of Manu, the Lord became the descendants of the Manu dynasty, and ruled over the miscreant kingly order, subduing them by his powerful real weapon. Undeterred in all circumstances, his rule was characterized by his glorious fame, which spreads over the three lokas and above them to the planetary system of Satyaloka, the topmost in the universe. So Srimad Bhagavatam is giving us so much explanation of the position of the living entity in relation to the Supreme Lord, that they're eternally his servant, but it also gives us an understanding of the situation of the material world, where things are placed. So, and it also gives us an explanation of how things are totally controlled by the Lord. He has a plan for everything. The creation goes in this way, and from this happens this and that. Lord Brahma comes and puts the planetary systems all in order. Everything is totally organized by the Lord, and goes on by his will. We have our little individual free will, how we want to reciprocate with the Lord, or if we want to reciprocate with him at all. And that's just that minute little fragment of independence is all. But any action that one does, if one's following the Lord, okay, let's say if one's not following the plan of the Lord, and just thinking that it's just me in this situation and everything that I want, I can endeavor for anything that I want, and doesn't have any regard for religious or the laws of the Lord, then we get the result of that through karmic reaction to our activity. Every single thing has a reaction in the material world for a materialistic person. Every single thing. You're driving down the road in your car and you're driving carefully and safely and everything, but there are little bugs that are hitting your windshield or your fender or wherever they're hitting. And we're still, that person is still responsible for taking that life, even though it was unintentional, etc., etc. They're responsible. What to speak of minor details like that? Every single thing has its action and reaction in the material world. And on the other side is someone who tries to take shelter of the Supreme One, and immediately steps over the threshold into the path of bhakti, just by attempting to surrender to Krishna. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he uses that phrase, the threshold of bhakti. So just by coming in, then the influence of the internal potency of the Lord is on us. And one is not so strictly under the action and reaction principle, tit for tat, action and reaction in the material world, but in the internal potency of the Lord. Everything is then tweaked, twisted, or turned. Twisted doesn't have a good connotation. Turned so that it brings us closer to the Lord. So one of our verses that we're supposed to concentrate on is verse 18. So let's go back to 18, okay? And now we'll read the purport. I just wanted to make sure that I covered all the verses. Okay, so here's the verse. Bali, who put on his head the water that washed the lotus feet of the Lord, did not think of anything beside his promise, in spite of being forbidden by his spiritual master. The king dedicated his own personal body to fulfill the measurement of the Lord's third step. For such a personality, even the kingdom of heaven, which he conquered by his strength, was of no value. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Bali Maharaj, by gaining the transcendental favor of the Lord in exchange for his great material sacrifice, was able to have a place in the Vaikuntha Loka with equal or greater facilities of eternal enjoyment. Therefore, he was not at all the loser by sacrificing the kingdom of heaven, which he had possessed by his material strength. So just to become a little more familiar with this pastime. So Bali Maharaj having conquered the heavenly planets, was enjoying obviously all that great facility that's there. Srila Prabhupada often explains that the heavenly planets, all the sensual pleasures are hundreds and thousands and millions of times more pleasurable than what we're experiencing here. So it's hard to actually even imagine what pleasures are that people experience, the level of pleasure that people experience there. But anyway, when he realized, when the Lord came to him, and he had a realization that this is the Supreme Lord, even all of that pleasure that he was experiencing as the ruler of the universe, etc., and everyone had to do whatever he said, he realized it had no value in comparison to his relationship, his loving relationship with the Supreme Lord had no value. Okay, so Prabhupada continues. In other words, when the Lord snatches away one's hard-earned material possessions and favors one with his personal transcendental service for eternal life, bliss, and knowledge, such taking away by the Lord should be considered a special favor on such a pure devotee. Can we have some little reactions to that sentence? What comes to your mind? Yay? A little bit more verbal reactions. Can you scroll up a little so they can see? In other words, when the Lord snatches away one's hard-earned material possessions. Now, we have the tendency to read the Srimad Bhagavatam and it's like, the book, it's over there. But bring it to your life. Have you experienced some disappointment in trying to gain something and have it taken away? And have you had a similar reaction like this, that you thought it was great, that Krishna took it away? Well, please share it with us.
So I had 2 car accidents about 7 years apart. And in both car accidents, it was a low-speed car accident, black cars, same sort of thing, like slow down on the freeway. Like it was wild. It was like the same exact car accident. And in both situations, the car accidents helped me to let go of the life that I was living. And so by him totaling both of those cars, it was like this thing that was keeping me rooted in an aspect of my life that was no longer serving my spirit. And so it was like both times. I mean, I also got a nice insurance payouts both times, which helped, but but both times it was like a really clear, like, okay, he took away this car, which was kind of like it was the vehicle that was moving me around the life that I was in. And both times I was just so grateful afterwards that he had taken this like large material object out of my life so that I could wake up to stepping into the next chapter.
Thanks, beautiful. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else like to share? Even an opposite reaction? Gopal?
Well, yeah, this actually happened to me, but when looking back, you can see where it all was mercy. But now the walls are closing in again. So what if he takes away your hard-earned material possessions and doesn't favor you with personal transcendental service?
And doesn't favor you with personal transcendental service for eternal life, bliss, and knowledge?
It says, when he snatches away one's hard-earned material possessions and favors one with personal transcendental service.
Yes.
If he takes that away.
Well, that's the challenge that we face, right? Because the Lord can do anything. Go ahead.
I have a breaking point, though.
Okay. You have a breaking point if he takes away your service or all the opportunities. Is that what you're saying? Okay, just yeah. But then again, what's our, if we can try to remember, sometimes we might not be able to. Yeah, looking back it's right. But even so now, when we experience, and this is the point that I would like to bring out, even we might be experiencing at present or in your future or maybe in your past, whatever, some challenges that we're faced where we feel like we're not, or we don't feel the protection of the Lord or the reciprocation of the Lord or the Lord's mercy, then we need to again cry out even loud, the internal cry. Please help me see this properly. Please. So what could be some possible solutions or some possible avenues that a person might take when they're not seeing that the Lord's favoring them?
I heard a sannyasi say one time that what it means when God protects you is it means He does what's best for you.
It means He does what's best for you. Yeah, yeah. And what if you can't remember that? And usually it's much harder while the test is going on. It's much harder to remember that. Now, 7 years after the first car accident, 7 years, whatever, you can think of how it changed your life. So that's always good to remember those things, especially when there's no big test going on, so that later when the test comes, you can, go. But oftentimes, again, because we're so small and tiny and, insignificant, sometimes that remembrance isn't there. That's why we need to have association. That's the point. We need to have association or seek association, or maybe there's not a particularly close person that you're with at the have a relationship at the time, but then seek that out. Seek out and also hear from proper source. Hear from the pure devotees, the more advanced devotees. Take Srila Prabhupada's books, open them up, see what he's saying to you right now, to us right now. And these things will help lead us on, help us maintain it when it initially doesn't seem that it's possible to go on. Any other comments or questions on that particular point or aspect? Yes, Mr. Mishringa.
Yeah, just personally interesting. I had kind of two similar situations of where the Lord took my living situation and career away, and I just had two different responses to him. The first time it happened, like 10 years ago or so, it was when I was trying to practice Krishna consciousness, and then everything kind of fell apart due to toxic relationships, both men and women in my life, friends, and my responses. And because I felt like I was trying to invest in, like Gopal was saying, devotional service, to the local temple and setting up temple in my home and trying to practice and read, I actually shelved my relationship with Krishna after that because I knew it had directly come from him, the removal of the entanglements that I had. And it's not that I didn't believe in him, but I just had kind of decided to be inactive. And then before I came to Krishna House, my living situation in another city, all kind of lined up for me to have to move out. But it was where I was, I don't know, in a different place and praying every morning and seeking a lot harder. And I just was maybe more curious, like, this is interesting. Yeah, I'm losing something, but maybe it's like what Presence was saying, the removal of a situation for me to get to another situation. Right. And then once during that time of knowing I was going to have to leave that apartment in that city, most likely when I came here and visited, I was like, oh, it's because it's time for me to move into Krishna House. Yeah. Yeah. And I made peace with that removal this time.
Yeah, thank you. And so this is kind of what I just like to bring out, this practical application of it. Sometimes the situation is really clear. Oh, this is from Krishna, it's for my good, Hari Bol, Krishna, you're so kind. And sometimes the state of our consciousness doesn't necessarily see it like that right off the bat. But that's why it's good, now that you've gone through that experience once or twice, to remember your reaction so that the next time something happens, and it will be totally different, and we won't be able to imagine, oh, it could be this, whatever. We won't be able to imagine the circumstances, but we can remember the general lesson that learned. Krishna revealed himself that he had a plan for me, which was better than my plan. And so let me hang in there as best as I can in the meantime and make the most progress I can in this life, because Krishna is unlimitedly kind. Yes, Prabhu.
This is so interesting, and the president's mentioned 7 years. I noticed that there is about a cycle that happens every 7 years. In Vedic astrology, Saturn ascends in your life. It doesn't destroy, but it delays. So you could be moving in one direction, and it just like tilts you a different way. You know what I mean? And veers you onto a course that's for your benefit. But zooming out in my life, it's happened about every 7 years. There's this something that starts stirring, and then I start changing a lot of things. Some of it's intentional, and then some of it just happens to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it all seems to happen in this cycle,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's according to my astrology and my karma. There's these forces at play, but I like the zooming out, and everybody seems to be going through like the same cycle. So I guess I feel it coming again, and I feel a little more mature and prepared. So it's just like positioning myself to accept the Lord's blessings and listen to that voice compared to just white knuckling fighting it, because it ends much worse. And I'm in the process of that now. It's just like,
good,
stop fighting so hard and just let it wash over you.
And then good. And that another point that I'd like to make is that now perhaps there's not so much testing going on in your personal life or whatever. Perhaps it's not happening so intensely. But this is a good time to offer prayers. Pay it forward. Pray it forward. Pray it forward. Please, help me retain consciousness and loving attitude toward your lotus feet. Let me stay in the association of devotees. Let me take advantage. I have a spare half an hour right now. Let me read the Bhagavatam. So, you know what I mean? Stock up on our devotional points that we can get. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to continue on in the purport. Material possessions, however alluring they may be, cannot be permanent possessions. Now, have you heard something like that before? And then are we still surprised when something happens, when the car gets totaled or whatever? Cannot be permanent possessions. Therefore, one has to voluntarily give up such possessions, or one has to leave such possessions at the time of quitting his body. Now, voluntarily giving up possessions can mean physically doing it, but it also can be the mentality of thinking that this is mine and belongs to me and I deserve this and that mentality. You give up that mentality, or try to anyway. That's the point. The sane man knows that all material possessions are temporary, and that the best use of such possessions is to engage them in the service of the Lord, so that the Lord may be pleased with him and award him a permanent place in his Param Dham. Bhagavad Gita, we're already at the end of time. How much more do we have? Okay, Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, 5 and 6. The Param Dhamma of the Lord is described as follows. I'm going to skip the Sanskrit. One who possesses more in this material world in the shape of houses, land, children, society, friendship, and wealth possesses these things only for the time being. One cannot possess all this illusory paraphernalia created by Maya permanently. Such a possessor is more illusioned in the matter of his self-realization. Therefore, one should possess less or nothing, so that one may be free from artificial prestige. We are contaminated in the material world by association with the three modes of material nature. Therefore, the more one spiritually advances by devotional service to the Lord, in exchange for his temporary possessions, the more one is free from the attachment of material illusion. Can someone else continue reading? Yes, go ahead.
To achieve this stage of life, one must be firmly convinced about spiritual existence and its permanent effects. To know exactly the permanency of spiritual existence, one must voluntarily practice possessing less or only the minimum to maintain one's material existence without difficulty. One should not create artificial needs. That will help one be satisfied with the minimum. Artificial needs of life are activities of the senses. The modern advancement of civilization is based on these activities of the senses, or, in other words, it is a civilization of sense gratification. Perfect civilization is a civilization of Atma, or the soul proper. The civilized man of sense gratification is on an equal level with animals because animals cannot go beyond the activities of the senses. Above the senses is the mind. The civilization of mental speculation is also not the perfect stage of life because above the mind is the intelligence. And the Bhagavad Gita gives us information of the intellectual civilization.
Okay, hold on a second. So here Srila Prabhupada keep comparing the material world. If you're just in the mentality of acquiring things and gaining more possessions, that's not very conducive because everything's temporary. You're only going to have them for a certain amount of time anyway. Then if you're on the level of on an analytical level, on the mental level, where you're analyzing this and that and this and that, that has a benefit, but only so much benefit. So higher and higher levels of realization are there until one actually understands by hearing, through hearing, that this material body, this what I consider myself, this is not who I really am. I have a spiritual, eternal identity, and that's as a servant of Krishna. And what and how that service to Krishna is will be gradually revealed to one as they make progress in cleansing the misconceptions off of the mind and heart. And I'm going to skip down because we're to the last paragraph that says, those who obtain the comforts of material civilization made for sense gratification should try to attain the kingdom of God by following in the footsteps of Bali Maharaj, who exchanged his acquired material strength, which was quite vast, all of 3 worlds he acquired, by adopting the process of Bhakti Yoga as recommended in Bhagavad Gita and further explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's what you get when you have 4 verses to cover and each have 3-page reports. Any feedback, comment, thoughts, or questions? Or just waiting for our favorite prayer? That one. Anyway, so just consider that during the, yes, no, all right. Kabul, Kriya.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for class. You were kind of saying like, if no like tribulations are really going on in our life, like we can still pray. But honestly, like, I'm kind of thinking like Queen Kunti, like praying for the calamities, because that is when my prayers are the most strong. And so I'm just trying to figure out like, how do we cultivate that same strength in our prayer when everything is going
well, sometimes
okay?
Even repeating the prayers by the great souls, like Queen Kunti's prayers, by repeating those prayers. Let me not forget that this is not my home. Let me not forget that I don't belong here. Let me take all of these, so prayers by already perfected beings are also good to say, and repeat and imbibe. So that would be my one recommendation. Okay, thank you very kindly for your extended attention. Hare Krishna.